All right, great. Well, that was a great transition because Sid is actually our next speaker. So Sid, just come back. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you.
Let me not forget this.
Oh yeah. All right. Let me.
But I do have to. I just want to give Baseten a little plug because we couldn't have done this without Baseten. Baseten was our partner at our last Gen AI Summit. They've been a partner. We see you guys being such a crucial tool for all of our A-Teams during our hackathons when they're building with our customers. So really excited to have you here today. And Sid, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, thank you all. I actually want to start off by saying I'm so excited that there's such a strong AI community in New York now. This is sick. Yeah, so I'm so I'm Sid. I do engineering at Baseten. So, we're all, at this point, in the night, we're all familiar with all of the buzz and excitement that's been happening with AI these past 6 months. Today, what I'm going to be talking about is what some businesses have had to do, or like how, some businesses are getting value out of AI today. Like, there are a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulties actually that a lot of businesses have had to go through, and we've been lucky to kind of be witness to a lot of that. So I work at Baseten. For those who don't know, Baseten, we do ML infrastructure. So we are kind of the support for a lot of the companies that you see today that are doing a lot of this cool AI stuff. Specifically, we help people who've trained their own models or have open source models that they want to deploy, and actually use those in applications. So you have a model already, you want to use that in an app. And I think because of where we sit in the stack, we've just been really lucky to witness and support a lot of companies that are doing really innovative stuff with AI today. And today we're excited to share some of the lessons that we've learned from some of our customers that have been really successful using AI to power their businesses. All right, so lesson number 1 is focus on your customers. And I think that we've seen this in the companies that have presented today, but the reality is that the key insights for any kind of change that you're going to make is going to come from understanding your domain and understanding your customers really, really well. There are going to be very, very few instances where you're going to be able to take a business problem and sprinkle a little bit of GPT on it and get results out of it. I think, what we've seen is that, if a problem wasn't a problem before GPT existed, it's probably not going to be a problem now because it is. So I think is understanding your domain, understanding your customers really well, is really, really key. All right. Lesson number 2 is that the infrastructure for this stuff is really, really difficult to deal with. We've seen many examples at this point where we have really, really talented ML people, really, really talented data scientists who are able to train models. But then when it gets to the point of, okay, I have this model, I want to use it in an app, really, really struggle because there are a lot of things that just go into actually going from, okay, this works, we have some working examples, to this is a real app running in production. And finally, I imagine that most of you here have a ChatGPT tab open when you're working. So you'll know that it doesn't always get things right. For your business, you need to, coming back to point number 1, you need to understand how much does accuracy matter? What is the tolerance for errors that you're going to see from AI being used in your app? And chances are, if you have a low tolerance, you can still benefit a lot from this stuff. You just need to think more holistically about how you're integrating AI into your product. And there's a very good chance that you actually still need to have humans in the loop to correct the errors that the LLMs that you're using are making, or something like that. It just requires sort of more holistic thinking about how to integrate these things, and versus just being able to sort of add in a layer of GPT into your product and going from there. So we're going to share a couple examples of companies that have been really successful using AI. All right, so first up is Laurel. Do we have any lawyers in the house tonight? All right. Yeah, we got a couple lawyers. All right, so one of the most annoying things about being a lawyer at a firm is that you're billing your customers for time, which means that you need to, at the end of the day, account for all the time that you spent on each of your clients so that you can bill properly. This is really annoying. The founders of Laurel recognized this early on. And they set out to can we, optimize, and not just for lawyers, for any, timekeeping professional, can we design a system that allows them to do what they actually want to do, which is, practice law or whatever it is, instead of having to keep track of time? Like, are there signals that we can use to analyze that? That's the problem that they set out to solve. And so what they did was the people behind Laurel are really, really talented data science and ML people. And what they did is they took a lot of email data, a lot of calendar data, and trained models that can really, really accurately, classify and tell like what, which calendar events, which emails correspond to client work, which ones don't, and for the ones that correspond to client work, which client they correspond to. They would like train really, really sophisticated models. But then when it came to actually building the product, they ran into a lot of problems, because to actually use those models, you need monitoring. You need to make sure that, if you're making changes to these, you're not actually breaking your product. You want to be able to keep tabs on your model's performance and make sure that it's continuing to work. You need logs. If there are issues, if your model breaks on certain input, you need to know. Auto scaling is a big problem. So, with a lot of these AI models, you don't want to, you want to, pay more money and scale them up when you have lots of traffic, and scale them back down when you don't, so that you're not giving AWS all your money. And so Laurel, they recognized all of these infrastructure problems, and we're actually able to use base 10 to solve most of those problems, because we actually take care of, helping people find a GPU cloud, helping people monitor their models to make sure that, things aren't getting worse or slower, and logging, and all the really hard things about doing infrastructure for all this ML stuff. Cool. All right, the second company you all have probably heard of, Patreon. So Patreon's an interesting case, because they aren't an AI first company. They've been around for a while, but still recognize that they had problems that AI could be a great solution for. So, one of the big problems that Patreon set out to solve last year was, can we make our video content, which is, the biggest driver of Patreon subscriptions, more accessible to audiences? What does that mean? That means good closed captioning. The hard thing is that closed captioning is actually very hard to get right. And a lot of services that do it are actually have people doing it manually. Or there are paid subscription services that don't necessarily get things, do things exactly in the way that you want them, and are really, really expensive. But earlier this year, or it might have been late last year, OpenAI released this thing called Whisper, which was like a step change in how good transcription could be. Like, transcription went from it's okay to this is now pretty much a solved problem, overnight, when OpenAI released Whisper. And Patreon was actually able to use Whisper. So this is a very, very different case to Laurel. And I think that we're seeing this increasingly, where, rather than training their own models, Patreon was able to take this existing model that OpenAI had trained, deploy it on base 10 without needing, ML or data science specific people. Like, this was work done by engineers to transcribe all their video content. So Whisper on base 10 is now powering all of Patreon's video content. But this wasn't just a question of like sort of sticking Whisper in there and waiting for videos to come in and transcribing them when they did. Because as you all know, like, Whisper is very good, but Patreon has video content in over 100 languages. It's not going to get everything right, and they needed to have some kind of feedback mechanism to make sure, and system to make sure that transcriptions could be updated. So in addition to integrating Whisper, there had to be kind of this more holistic thinking about how transcriptions were going to be executed, and that involved building a system where operations folks at Patreon could actually go in, edit transcriptions, and provide feedback as to like what's performing well and what's not performing well. And I think that key, like that, full loop, was really what allowed them to be really successful here and actually get all their video transcribed very cheaply. Yeah. So to reiterate here, I think that the key thing behind success using AI is just the deep of the customers. Like in both Laurel's case, they came from the profession and also had the technical skills and were able to like realize this is a problem. This is very, very naturally suited to AI because those kind of classifications could happen. In Patreon's case, recognizing that transcriptions aren't always going to be 100% accurate, and we need to have a way of getting to that 100%, and recognizing that this more holistic system needed to be built. And both realizing that infrastructure is hard. We want to focus on building our products and not like with the nitty gritty of choosing GPU clouds and all the annoying bits that go into ML infrastructure. So at Baseten, we've been really lucky to support a lot of companies. I think someone mentioned earlier that it feels like we're in the eye of the storm. It really feels like that, and we're very lucky to be able to support companies that are kind of at the forefront of this major sea change that we're seeing right now, and helping them continue to find value and use all these new advancements and actually using them to get to real customer value at the end of the day. So yeah. All right.
Do we have? Can we go on? Yeah. Do we have any questions for Sid? Anyone? Any takers? Mike? We have speakers supporting speakers here.
There we go.
And that's what we love to see.
We love it.
That's what we love to see. They're coming down.
Oh, it's quick. How are you getting GPUs?
It is a problem. Right now we are on AWS, but we're kind of looking into going, more multi-cloud just for A100 availability purposes.
in all seriousness, like what's your take on what inventory is going to be like for GPUs over the next 2 years? Do you think this is something that's going to become a non-ish issue, or is it just going to get worse?
It's going to get worse.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's either going to stay the same or get worse, just because it's kind of this arms race of it takes a long time for production to come online, combined with models are getting bigger. The latest version of GPT is probably it's way bigger than the previous version, and we're just going to see bigger and bigger models. I think the world that Baseten is betting on is that there are going to be many models that end up winning at the end of the day, and they're just going to keep getting bigger, and the demand for GPUs is, I think, going to continue exceeding the supply.
Amazing. Any other questions? All right. Here you
go. I think a lot of the examples that we've heard about today are using the models that OpenAI, et cetera, are training. Not a lot of fine tuning, no training from scratch. Have you had a use case where you really had to train a model either from scratch or at least do some fine tuning?
Yeah, I think actually most of our customers at this point have actually trained their own models. Laurel, the example that we talked about, that they trained from scratch. I think that we're increasingly seeing companies. I think fine tuning is very new. And I think the buzz kind of preceded a lot of the actual use of fine-tuned models, but I think that we're at the start of seeing a lot more fine-tuned open source models. I think the latest one is Falcon. Falcon is, I don't know if any of you have tried it yet, but it's amazing. It's an open source model. That there are going to be a lot of applications that are going to be built off of fine-tuned versions of Falcon, and I think the other kind of big source of models trained are Mosaic ML. I think that their approach is really interesting, where they're training models on behalf of customers, and I think we're going to see a lot more things like that too, where companies are training their own models that might be based off of Mosaics, their MPT or whatever.
Thank you. Sorry, so the Laurel model, that's an LLM that they've trained?
It's not an LLM, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's more what I meant.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions?
Great talk. Thank you for it. You're first of the three with customers. Thinking about sales cycles, have you seen any applications of AI that are impacting the length of sales cycles?
That's a good question. I'm not sure yet. I think a lot of the tools that we've seen for sales have been around prospecting. I think there's a company called Clay, I think, that we've started that's been really interesting, that it has helped people with outbound. But I think in terms of shortening sales cycles, I'm not sure, because I feel like a lot of that is still based on companies' timelines, which is changing a lot less quickly than, yeah.
Part of my thesis or premise in asking the question is if AI can help customers understand their own requirements and get there, does that that's part of the sales cycle? Let's speed up.
I think there might be a business there. Yeah. I haven't seen anything like that, but I think I think connecting businesses to solutions, I think, is still a huge problem, and I expect that there are going to be companies that are built around helping companies onboard new customers and close that gap more quickly. I think we would love that ourselves.